all this research on my own, but I use other people's inputs and try to put together and correct things as we get smarter over the years. Originally, I started out with this, wait a second, that's not what I want to share. Here we go. I started out with just basically collecting the Millennium cards, simply as a variety, the 2 Kreuzer and the 5 Kreuzer. Back in the late 70s, I think I got my first set. And then in the 90s, Emmerich Walmusch prompted me to start looking at different things within the set. And, you know, he made some assumptions that were not necessarily correct, but he based those assumptions on information gleaned from literature like the monograph. And the monograph was kind of hazy about how these cards were printed. So Emmerich ran with it. And then a year or so later, Paul came up with the correct interpretation as far as the printing and the paper. So, you know, I tried to pull all this stuff together, and I used the illustrations from Hobody's catalog that was published a couple of years ago, and also from my personal collection. And I like to, you know, give credit for Paul for sending me the exhibit pages that sort of confirmed the correct nature of how these cards were printed. So I'm not going to go into the, you know, the individual designs of the cards. You can pick that out of the catalogs. But I want to, okay, these are my references, just what I talked about. You know, Emmerich wrote an article, and a year later, Paul wrote a sequel to it.
How about, did you want to share the PowerPoint or the screen? We don't see.
I guess I didn't click something, did I?
Yeah, down at the bottom in the middle there, share screen.
Yeah, I know. Let me do this again. There we go. Share screen.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. And
now where's my screen?
Yeah, you need your PowerPoint.
Well, I clicked to share, but the PowerPoint went away.
So, oh, there's your screen. So now you can get.
Okay, now are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep. Good.
All right. So this is my title page. I copied the back of the pictures from the cards from Hondur's catalog. So anyway, these are the references that I used and try to put together all the information from that. So a little bit of background on the Millennial Exhibition. It was a big thing. Hungary at that time had been an independent nation for about 30 years, and they wanted to showcase the history and the economic nature and the independence of the country. So they came up with this urban renewal project on the outskirts of Budapest, where X marks the spot from this contemporary map of the city. And they constructed this very elaborate exhibition, both state displays as fair and private enterprise. So eventually, this area became the city park, and it's the center of you know, national celebrations around Hero Square. But at that time, it was just you know, where the rail lines left the city. So besides the exhibition itself, there were major infrastructure projects that were conducted by the government to showcase, you know, Hungary coming of age. One of those things was digging up Andrássy Street. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like the Champs-Élysées of Budapest. The street was excavated in an underground railway built from the center part of the city of Pest out to the exhibition near Hero Square. And this happened to be the first continental underground railroad. After, well, they didn't count London, the tube there, as being part of the continent. So if you consider the tube being the first, the Hungarian small, they call it the small subway line, was the second in the world to be built. And then just to highlight another example, the Liberty Bridge, currently called Liberty Bridge, at that time it was named after Ferenc József, was built on the southern part of Pest, connecting Buda and Pest. It was made using steel manufactured by the Guns enterprise in Csepel, so it was a domestic achievement. And the other thing was that the nobility wanted to showcase itself. And Hungary was still a kind of a semi-feudal entity where the nobility carried a lot of political and economic weight. So on June 7th, which happened to be the coronation anniversary of the king, the nobles of Hungary paraded in full regalia. It was written up as a big thing in the Schreibner's magazine that I found a copy of from 1897. And here are a couple of postcards showing, you know, the nobles in full national regalia with their attendants parading in front of this particular building right here. Housed the judiciary, the highest judiciary of the country. And at the time the building was designed, it was vying for, in a competition to be the Parliament building. Now, granted, the Parliament was more grandiose, and I think it was a better choice than this particular building. But anyway, this is opposite the Parliament building on Kossuth Square, where the parade was conducted. Another thing was Árpád Festi was a painter, and he painted this monumental panoramic view of the entry of the Magyars in 896. 896 is maybe, you know, it's the accepted date for the Magyars' entry into the Carpathian Basin. But really, the entry was conducted, you know, maybe 10 years prior to that, and maybe 5 years after. So it's around that time. But 896 stuck in the history books as being the official date. So Festi's painting was 120 meters long and 15 meters tall. So you can see that it's a monumental thing. Certain design elements of it were taken out and used for the centennial issues, stamp issues in 1995, 1996. The painting itself was housed in this circular building called the Rotunda near the exhibition. It wasn't actually part inside, but it was on the outside. And here's a map of the exhibition. It shows 79 different private, industrial, and government agencies. I've got another map that has 222 sites identified on it. So this is kind of a condensed version. The numbers show different places. You know, one is Hero Square, where the future Millennium Monument was erected. In 1896, it hadn't been built yet, but the plans were already in place. The old Budapest Zoo, which was near the exhibit, is still there. Number 3 shows the rotunda where the Festi panorama was on exhibit. 4 was the main entrance. 5, the captive balloon Goddard, the site of it. And 6 was the entertainment district, which is Ős Budavár. And we'll talk about that some more later. The Goddard balloon I guess I misspelled balloon. Well, maybe that's the European spelling. Was a very expensive piece of entertainment for the exhibition goers. I've got a ticket reproduced here, and it shows the price of 3 forints for going up in this balloon, which went up to 500 meters. And 3 forints, you put it in perspective, a unskilled agricultural laborer might earn 1 or 2 forints for a day's worth of work. So this was very expensive. Now we get into the commemorative cards. Granted, they were a poor substitute for stamps because at that time, you know, the commemorative stamp issues were not fashionable, or I guess they hadn't been invented. But there were several publicity label designs printed. I showed 2 of them. This one with the Chief Arpad being raised on the shield by the tribal chieftains design appeared in probably 24 different color combinations. The cards themselves had groups of designs. You know, 6 of them showed scenes from the exhibition. 6 showed views of Budapest. Another 6 views of historical Hungary. And 10 were dedicated to historical persons and events. 2 showed folk customs for better description that I don't have right now. And there were 2 cards with views from Croatia. 4 artists were commissioned to create the designs, and you can, you know, I used the numbers out of Hobodai's catalog. I think he was using the same sequence that Shimada used earlier, back 30 years earlier. And the names of each artist are embedded in the designs, more or less obviously. I can't find a couple of things, you know, I can't find Chernai on number 7 and the printer on number 31. Now, Hobodai sent me this web address, which gives information about Morelli. Now, he ran a woodcut institute in Budapest, and it's rather obscure, but he was able to dig this information up for me. So he did the engraving for the plates for the designs that were printed with engraving. Now, the misconception about the cards came about because of the paper. Originally, I think Emmerich Vamos thought that the design of the pictures were printed separately, and then the paper that the designs were printed on was bonded together with the front side that was used by the state printing office to print indicium sides. But this is totally incorrect, as Paul was so kind to explain it, because he had examples of half printed cards where the back side was printed but the front side wasn't. Anyway, actually 3 sheets of paper were bonded together to use for the printing. One side was white, which may or may not be white right now. The other side was buff, and they were bonded together to a center sheet. Now, I don't think that I've tried, but I haven't been able to take the layers apart. I didn't try soaking, but I tried, you know, mechanically try to see if the layers could be separated, but they're not. Then Emmerich made the incorrect assumption because he didn't have the clarity of the information was not published in the monograph. But Paul was able to correct that, and Hobodai mentions that this special type of paper was continued to be used to print the regular postcards starting in 1900 when the new currency cards came into account. Now the 22 cards were printed using 7-color lithography on the white side, and the two printers were the Pesti Könyvnyomda and Posner and Son, and they printed up the cards and then supplied the half-printed sheets of paper to the state printing office to print the indicia on it. Now, in the lithographed cards, the colors appear like in a watercolor painting, where you take a brush and then you add the color to the painting. So they're kind of like blobs of color. Now, 10 cards were printed on 4-color recess engraving by the state printing office itself. And then these were the ones that were, the plates for this were engraved by Morelli. And the design, the color is made up of straight and cross-hatched lines and discrete dots of color to make them look different than the lithograph cards. State printing office printed the indicium side on all of the cards. Now, the design of the header was new at the time. It was already intended to print the 4-filler domestic cards that would be issued in 1900. But for the Hungarian version, for the bilingual version, they used the same arrangement for the text that was currently circulating on cards starting in 1882. The difference was that the digits 96 appeared in the lower left corner of both versions. And the indicium was different than the embossed cards because they had to, because the paper was thicker, and I think the embossing would not have worked with the new paper. So the folds of the envelope on the indicium design were printed as opposed to being embossed. The international cards were the same layout as was used in 1882, again with the 96 added to the lower left corner, and the indicium now incorporated the folds of the envelope in the design. Again, it was not embossed. And the last slide will deal with the indicium on the 5KR cards, because there were 2 different dies prepared to print them, which is an ongoing investigation that Andor Hobodai is really enthusiastic about. Now, a complete set of cards consists of 30 Hungarian views for the 2KR. There are no Croatian scenes. The bilingual cards have 2 Croatian views only. And the international cards have the same 30 views that the Hungarian cards have, but there are no bilingual or cards showing Croatian scenes for the international cards. It's my understanding, and I'm maybe stretching the information a little bit, but the cards were issued incrementally starting in April of 1896, but they were valid for use until September 30 of 1900, when all the Kreuzar denominated stamps lost their validity also. Now, the printing quantity is, again, based on information that may or may not be correct. I don't think that the exact number of cards are known. There is printing data for 1895 and 96 in the volume 3 of the monograph. And it shows that each year 1.1, 1.2 million sheets of the 2 Kreutzach cards were printed. And each sheet of the cards consisted of 32 cards. That was a layout. Now, the same data shows that only 1,400 of the international cards were printed. So if you take the 1,400 multiplied by 32, that gives you approximately 44,800 individual international cards printed in each year. And it will not, satisfy the fact that approximately 1 million 5KR cards were printed altogether. So, I don't think that the printing data shown in the monograph necessarily includes the international cards. Why they were kept separate, it's hard to say. If you take the data to be valid for the 2 Kreutzach cards, yeah, okay, you're talking of 32 million cards being printed, and that could very well incorporate the Millennium cards, but not the international cards. The data for the number of cards that were printed actually originated back in 1921 with Peyer's article published in the Gunsacher. And Shimai accepted this data, and it shows that between 270,000 and 363,000 of the 2 KR cards were printed, which is a large number, and it satisfied the domestic demand. The demand for international cards was evidently minimal because only 30 to 35,000 of the 5KR cards were printed. But my engineering background looks at these numbers and tries to divide it by 32 because that's how many cards were in a sheet, but you don't get an even number. So, where did these numbers come from? They're rounded up estimates, in my opinion. They may or may not include printer's waste, cutting defects, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's a little bit about the philatelic history of the exhibition. Opening day was May 2nd of 1896. There's an opening day ticket, reservation for a person at a particular tribune. The opening was conducted with the presence of the king, Ferenc József, and the exhibition closed on November 3rd. And these are actual cancellations from the opening day and the closing day. The exhibition had 3 regular post offices, 1, 2, and 3. And here's in my album page showing the 3 different post offices. There's the number 1S, which means Samu, number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3 post offices. Now, Emmerich Vámos was the one that clued me in on this person named A. de Ratz. And I don't know who he was, but he was a prolific user of the Millennium post offices. He sent cards to himself and his family members using the post offices. Sometimes, he sent the card from one post office to the other, addressed to himself. Now, like this particular one, it's mailed at I think it's mailed at number 2 post office, and he sent it to the number 1 post office. And this particular card he sent to relatives in Borosjene. So I know that I have encountered dozens of cards with his name and address on it. So he might have been early philatelist, or he might have been a postcard collector back then. Picture postcards were a popular collecting topic, probably about as popular as stamp collecting was. Now, there was also another post office located in the Millennium site. It was Ős Budavár, the historic Buda Castle is my translation. And this particular area of the exhibition consisted of restaurants and taverns, and, drinking places. And it was in the upper corner of the exhibition. So evidently it was popular because it stayed open until World War I, and eventually evolved into the amusement park called Vidám Park, which closed probably about 15, 20 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I personally was in the Vidám Park. Last time, I believe it was in 1981. I took my little kids there. And this particular, the people that went to Ős Budavár didn't necessarily go to mail postcards. So, the cancellation is not that common. Here's an example of it from September 23rd, 1896. And here's a picture postcard showing the personnel, the waiters, waitresses, etc., and at the entrance of Ős Budavár. Another entertainment district associated with the Millennial Exhibition was Constantinople in Budapest. And the person that dreamed this thing up, this was on the Buda side along the dead branch of the Danube River in Lágymányos. It had a short span of operation. The grandiose dream of the developer fell victim to a plague of mosquitoes in the summer, and it wasn't very popular. Sorry, the cat has rearranged the slides. Okay, here we go. Originally, this Budapest-Constantinople cancellation, I thought it was a railroad cancellation. Thanks to Emmerich Vamos, he clued me in on it that it wasn't a railroad cancellation. These particular cancels are not listed or dealt with separately in volume 6 of the monograph, unfortunately. So it's a data point, missing data point. So evidently the Budapest-Constantinople post office operated between July and October of 1896. And I recently found this illustrated postcard showing, what that particular entertainment district was supposed to look like.
Csaba, may I ask, I guess these cancels are rare?
Yes, these are very, very hard to find.
Mm-hmm. Post office wasn't open very long.
Well, my theory is that the people that went to these places didn't go to mail postcards. They went to entertain themselves.
No, but they would want to brag, wouldn't they?
Well, sometimes. The interesting thing that the couple of cancels of the Budapest-Constantinople examples that I've found are all very smudged like this. So I don't know what to attribute that to, the particular clerk not cleaning the canceling device properly or what, but evidently, that to me, that's a mark of authenticity if it's smudged like that. Now the cards and the postal usage, the two cardstock cards were widely distributed. And I don't think anybody's ever really researched how they were distributed to the post offices. They pick up a batch of cards, irrespective of the design or what. I don't think they would sort through the cards to make sure that each post office got a full set of each design. I just assumed that they picked up a batch and they sent it out. And like I said, the 2KR cards are fairly easy to find, both in mint and used condition. Now, if somebody had a large stock of cards, maybe they could, backtrack and figure out, that particular city. Tianjin, for example, got, 5 designs of the cards and not 30 designs or whatever. I don't think anybody's researched that. While the cards were still being used, the normal use period, the Saxler company bought a large supply of the Unha de Janos postcards, and they used it to advertise their bitters, and they sent it to doctors, most of them to the United States. Now, I know I asked Paul this, but he had not seen a 5 Kreuzer card with the same design used as an advertising card. So I do not think that the 5 Kreuzer cards were bought by the company. The 2 Kreuzer cards, when they sent them to the US, had the 3 Kreuzer envelope design stamp on it, and with a nice perfin. AH for Andreas, no, SA, that's what it is. Saxleiter András, Unha de Janos, HJ. Nice perfins. I think, Robert, you bought a card like that recently, didn't you?
I did indeed.
And, I found this example of the Posner and Son card being used as an advertising card on a particular design that the Posner printers used. Now, when it comes to the 5 Kreuzer cards, they're very scarce, postally used. And I'm still working on my set. I think I need about 3 or 4 more. But anyway, a purist will want the card that paid the exact postage to the particular country, this bottom part. No, this top card was sent to Darien, Georgia, in the US. Properly paid the 5 Kreuzer international rate. This other card on the bottom was sent to Germany. Now, Germany was part of the, I guess, the treaty rate postage. 2 Kreuzer was the postage both domestically and both Austria and all the provinces of the empire, as well as Germany. So that this particular card represents an overpayment of 3 Kreuzer. Now, I guess the exhibition must have had international visitors, and they bought the cards up to take as souvenirs, and years later they decided to use them as formulary cards. And here are some examples. A couple of cards used from Germany in 1906, and one used from Romania in 1901. And it's interesting, sometimes the stamps were placed on top of the indicium, sometimes they were placed in other places, but the indicium was duly canceled. And I got another couple examples of interesting use. Here's a picture of the procession of the Holy Right Hand of King Saint Stephen on August 20th was the official holiday for that. And they would have a procession in the castle of Buddha with the reliquary, is shown right here, holding the right hand. And this particular card was canceled. Budapest, Vár Post Office, and Castle Post Office on August 20th. So this was kind of a commemorative card. And the cards were valid until all Kreuzer denominated stamps were valid until September 30th of 1900. It's an example of the 2 Kreuzer cards used as 4 filaire plus 1 filaire to satisfy the domestic postage of 5 filaire at the time. When it came to the cutting of the cards, I don't think that was an exacting science. You know, I measured my cards. I looked at what the catalog said the cards measured, and you know, the cards were kind of precursors. You know, they were just cut slightly differently than the cards that were currently used for regular issue from 1882. And there was a fair amount of tolerance in the size of the cards. My Millennium cards were, you know, like 1.5 millimeters to 0.5 millimeter in size. The difference. The regular cards of that era measured, you know, maybe 5 millimeters plus or minus 2 millimeters in dimension. So the cutting resulted in some errors on the cards. This is miscut. And here's another couple of examples of miscut cards. Now, Emmerich Mamush thought that the missing 96 digit was due to errors in cutting. You know, it's not the case. It is an error, and it's hard to find. And I've got one example shown right here where the digit 96 is missing from the card, and the back of the card is from the theaters. And I just recently, meaning yesterday, I got another card which is the same position with the theaters on there. So I've got 2 examples of missing 96. I've not really tracked this stuff in auction catalogs to see what it's worth, but I would think that you know, this is a true error, and it's pretty scarce. After the cards were invalidated, there was a large stock of them available, and evidently the post office was willing to sell them. Tasha, which is a bank house, acquired a large quantity of these cards and overprinted them to show that the indicium was no longer valid, and they used the card to advertise their lottery. Evidently, bank cash lotteries were bigger business than giving loans or earning, getting people to deposit their money in there. But they used this to advertise their lottery. And these cards are fairly hard to find, and every time I've seen them, dealers want exorbitant prices for them, which I don't want to pay, but they're interesting. Obadiah shows all the images of the lucky ladies that graced the repurposed cards. I found this interesting that, you got the same image of the lady with 2 different names. And occasionally, the image of the lady was really a label that they stuck to the card, not necessarily printed on. And Obadiah talks about other cards being used to advertise things. He shows this picture of the Stockings King. And I think Shimadi borrowed that image from Shimadi. Shimadi used it back in the 80s in his catalog too. Now, the type 2 indicia, type 1 and type 2 indicia is something that I think Robert started this, put the bug in everybody's ear. And Paul looked at it and he came up with more information. And Obadiah is really, really eager to find, the answers to this problem. for some reason, during the production of the 5 Kreuzer cards, the master, not the master, but the daughter was re-engraved to correct this flaw in the type 1 cards, where the line number 28 is disjointed. It shows up as a white spot. And this is out of the monograph. It shows that originally the master die consisted of just the design of the center portion of the indicium plus the beads around it. And then it became, I guess the triangles were there too. Then they added on to the shading lines, 85 shading lines, and that's where this error comes about. And in this particular version of the daughter die, you added the 5 to make it applicable for printing whatever you wanted to print that required a 5 Kreuzer indicium. And the lines for the envelope were added in this generation, and they were used to print the money orders and the Millennium cards in 1895. At some point in that production of the 5 Kreuzer cards, they decided to come up with a new die, which repaired the line number 28. And they printed the postal savings cards and some Millennium cards with that particular die. And in order to do that, they had to create a plate used for typography with 32 images with all the headings of the different cards. Now, there's some differences in the headings because of that. And Paul started looking at stuff because he's got a good supply of these things. And then Andor Hobodai thought this was great, and he's evidently doing a survey, and he kind of identified which type is which flaw is here, and he's trying to get a feel for how many different scenes exist with the different varieties from that so-called second printing. Now, so far, the only thing that we've been able to decipher is that the type 2 indicium is maybe 10% of the known 5 Kreuzer cards. So it's pretty hard to find. And the fact that collectors don't really have an abundance of these cards around, it's going to be a little difficult to get a feel for it. Right now, the valuation for a type 2 card should be maybe 10 times as valuable as a type 1. But anyway, this is an ongoing project. So with this, I'm done, and I can answer questions as best I can.
Csaba, thank you very much. That was fascinating. So let's see if there's any questions. Let's get back to.
Maybe I have
Martin, or no?
Yes, hello. Just to complete, I don't know if you can see me because I don't see me on the screen.
Oh, you can stop sharing, Csaba, if you want, unless you want to look at bring up some examples.
Let me see what you are sharing the screen. Stop share. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can always, if you need to show something else, you can always bring back the screen share and put it up. But
okay.
So Martin, I think, had a question.
So I just I don't know if you can see my screen because I don't see myself.
I can see you. Hold it up higher.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Here is a printing I have. I don't know if the colors are exact, with a very, very thin paper. of the picture.
It
And on
looks
the
like
back
the,
side, is the stamp with cancellation from Vetch.
lots, yeah.
So that's one example where is a thin paper. And
Well, it's somebody had used that pre-printed thing as a formulary card. It's not an official thing. It's somebody, maybe the printer decided to make postcards out of it or something. And,
yep, yeah, but this means it's a very thin paper.
Yeah,
right.
I think it is one of the 3 layers.
Yes, that's what I would think too.
Yeah.
So that's and then I have the other one, which is on a thick carton paper, which is not printed on the back side and with a picture on the other side.
Yeah.
So still challenging thin paper and thick paper.
Yeah.
Well,
But
the thin paper could be printer's waste that somebody used as a postcard later on.
No, it was already used. I think it's split later on, and the card without printing on one side, that is printer's waste.
Okay.
I have several different images with it. Yeah.
Just for sharing that. And an interesting point about the statistic, 10% of the type 2. So I will go back, maybe not this evening, but tomorrow to my five Kreuzer cards, because I just taken out 3, and 2 of them have are type 2. And what I've seen, but it's not statistically, it's the red color is really different from the other ones. It's a more intense red color with for the type 2 compared to the other ones. But I have to go back to my all my other 5 Kreuzer cards to look.
Well, you know, when it comes to the color, I always question age. Colors have a tendency to change age depending on, you know, how they were stored, what paper they were butted up against. So
I mean, it's really different. It's a really intense color compared to other ones from the both of him. But I will take this as an motivation to check my 5 Kreuzer cards.
right, and let me know, and I'll pass the information along to Hubodai.
Yeah.
And me too, Csaba. I'd love to get CC'd on whatever the information is.
The trouble is, everything is in that devil's tongue that you don't understand.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, you're right.
Csaba, George Shaw. I also will look through my 5 Kreuzer cards. I have a total of maybe 100. So, and I never thought to look between type 1 and type 2.
Well, it's like I said, it's something new that you know, it started last year, I think, and it's an ongoing thing.
I noticed on the illustration that there are other differences in the design. For example, if you look at the envelope pattern in back of the numeral, on type 1, it doesn't go all the way to the upper left corner. Type 2 appears to go all the way there. So,
well, Andor has identified, I think that Paul started this whole process. Andor has identified about 4 or 5 different elements in the indicium that are different, and it's not always the same. And he's just doing a survey to find out who has what, and I think he wants to eventually include that in his catalog.
Second point is the concessionary international rates to like Germany and so on, which were supposed to be 2 Kreuzer as opposed to 5 to the US. Do you or someone have a list of the countries that are included? For example, I have a used 5 Kreuzer card going to Greece.
Well, the only 2 Kreuzar was applicable to the Habsburg and the German Empire.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Okay,
this
now
would
the
be,
German Empire, included Poland at the time, so.
right. So then Greece would be a destination where it was a properly used 5 Kreutzer
5
card.
Kreuzar,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And my final question is, some of these for favor type purposes or whatever were used after September 2000. Do you have a sense of what the last known usage is? I have one from 2011, and I haven't looked through my whole box to see if there's a 2 Kreutzer that is later than that.
I know that, I forget who it was, but ran across it being used in 1946, I think, because of the lack of paper after the war. So, but that's incidental. I don't know if I personally wouldn't care to assign a value to that just because it's late usage. I mean, you could take a card right now and stick it in the US mail with the appropriate stamp, and that'd be current usage.
Right. And I'll also look for distribution of my used 2K cards by location to see if they're patterns. I have a couple of hundred of them. And we'll look for missing 96s as well.
Okay.
So fantastic presentation. I learned so much. And
Mhm.
so did my wife. So I shared it with her.
Well, if you ever find anything other than the one that shows the theaters with the missing 96 on
Okay.
it, let me know, because nobody's ever written about what position or what cards exist with the missing 96.
Okay.
And I have an example of 2 with altogether after all of
Yeah.
decades of collecting,
Mhm.
with both of them being the theaters.
Yeah. I too have only with the 3 theaters with the missing 96.
Okay, so the missing 96 will be only on that one particular card design.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, but is there any indication of how many of each design was, or is there any information on how many of each design were printed? Because I raise this because in my own kind of searching for these cards, some cards are just so easy to get your hands on that, there's tons of them around. And then there's other ones where, you search and you search and you search and you search. And, finally found one,
Well,
I'm just talking about the true
the
Kreutzer cards here. But
the Pyre catalog information that Shimada used is by design. And the numbers are different for each design.
oh, okay.
Okay.
So that's
I can send you a copy of from the catalog.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I assume
would like
that
one too.
the printer or whatever it was, the Posner or the Pestikunium, printed the same design 32 times on the back of a sheet, and then they shipped the sheet to the state printing office for the indicium printing.
Yeah, so like each like 32 there,
I mean, each sheet had the same design on it.
yeah, right. Which
Okay.
which would account for the fact that there weren't the same number of each design printed.
Right.
Yeah.
Csaba, if you want to send it to me, I think a lot of other people on the call might be interested in that. I'd be interested in it too. And I can just send it out, forward it to everybody that's on the call.
Okay.
I have a question about how individuals can acquire hundreds of the 2 and 5K BKR, because Robert and I have been, is it that they're easier to find in Europe than in North America? But George, you said you had hundreds. Can I ask your secret?
Most of them came from Europe.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. Thank you.
Question for you, Csaba.
Okay.
I was, as you guys were talking, I was going through my little modest collection here of these cards. And I was able to find examples of both the type 1 and type 2. So I kind of got in my head what they're supposed to look like. But then I ran across one where it almost looks like it's a type 1, but it's almost, the lines are all there. In other words, the big white spot is missing. It's not there. And then when I found the type 2 where they had redrawn it, I could see how the redrawn section of that, where they redrew it, was a little kind of very narrow, mark they put in there, a little bit narrower than the original line.
Well, it wasn't a straight line repair.
And it kind of went up.
Right, that's the type 2. Now, the other thing that you might be looking at, the type 1 with slight over inking, where the gap was filled with ink, excess ink. It's a printing process. It's not a variety.
But there shouldn't be any examples where there's not either the redrawn or a big white spot. Because like I'm saying, I'm finding ones where literally it's almost like it looks like the type 2, but the lines are.
I ran across the same thing, Chris. I just kind of attributed it to the fact that there was an inking issue. It's a type 1 with an inking issue, over inking.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wondered what happened
yeah.
to the, I wondered what happened to the paintings of the rotunda.
Oh, it's in the actually Pusta Vac. It's the center part of Hungary. There's a historical site, and it's being displayed right there.
Okay, so they survived.
Yeah, it survived.
Okay. And you said you were wondering whether the cards were issued at different dates, not all at the same time.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah, does a study of the dates that are on the actual cards that are in your possession, does that show a difference? Is there a study on that? I'm gonna
do that.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody's done that. I just assumed that as soon as the production was complete, they shipped out stuff as needed to the local, the domestic post offices. I mean, somebody that has, like George has a large stock of cards, could look at the dates and try to get some statistical analysis.
Yeah, it would be interesting that everybody looks at his cards and says, my first card of that type is such and such date, and then compare if there is really a difference or not.
I mean, this is not as earth-shaking as the
like
the first postcard issue. If you got something from October of 1867 or 69, then you got something good. The month of October was first issued.
Whenever you have a hypothesis in philately, you need a confirmation or not, just so you have to study it. I have only 4 cards, so I can't help you much.
Well, okay, I guess that's it. So
That's it. Yeah.
thanks for bearing with me.
Thank you. Csaba. That was a
you.
great presentation.
Great presentation.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic presentation.
Yep, and we'll post it up on the website within a week or so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Stay warm.
Okay.
Or
Thanks,
cool.
Csaba.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Yes. Bye-bye.